Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Team Agreements Virtual Summit, Reducing Common Disagreements in the Classroom. We're here with Susan MacDonald to talk about building strong teaching teams using collective visioning. And Susan is so passionate about inspiring positive change in the early childhood field. Her expertise is reflected in her professional speaking, coaching, and in her books, Inspiring Early Childhood Leadership and Inspiring Professional Growth. Susan is the founder of Inspiring New Perspectives, a consultancy focused on empowering educators and school leaders to create programs that deeply respect and nurture the possibilities that lie within each child, parent, and teacher. Her background includes director of a Reggio-inspired preschool program, adjunct faculty at Lesley University and Wheelock College, and Commonwealth of Massachusetts licensing supervisor. She is the past president of Boston Area Reggio-inspired Network and past vice president of the Massachusetts Association for the Education of Young Children. Welcome, welcome, Susan MacDonald. I appreciate you coming on board and being part of the virtual summit on reducing common conflicts in the classroom with team agreements. And I'm so excited that you're with us. You know, I'm a big fan of yours personally. And two, absolutely love the book on inspiring early childhood leadership. Have used it quite a bit when I go out and do work and training. So our folks should be familiar with your book as well. And actually wanted to jump in with the first question just about formatting the chapters. And your book talks about creating collaborative vision. And I wanted to know, why did you make this the very first chapter of the book?
Well, it is the foundation of the book, but to me, it's the foundation of the work. You know, how are we going to get educators passionate about their own growth if they are not working towards a vision? So really helping leaders understand, you can have really great professional development plans, you can set 2 goals for every person, but if people don't understand the why and the journey and that sense that we're all moving forward to enhance the quality of the program for children, teachers, families, for the really sustainability of the program, but also the lifespan of these children. If we're doing this well, we're changing everything. So to me, you know, and no matter if I'm working with a small group in-house program, speaking to a large group, we have to be thinking about this vision. I always joke, you know, we were a big road trip family when I grew up with my parents. And, you know, I remember going to AAA with my dad and getting that triptych with the map and every page. I was like the master of that. You knew where you were going. You didn't bundle a bunch of kids in the car and say, oh, you know, let's drive around. You had a plan. And everyone was excited about the journey and excited about the destination. And sadly, I think some of that's missing in our work.
And I love that you said it, and that's why I made it the very first question, because with team agreements, we do the same exact thing. We always talk about what is that vision and how well do people know it. And when they know it and everyone's on that same page, it allows the teaching teams and the whole program to move, like you said, together on this journey toward this same goal. But I don't know that people actually have really made the connection between having a shared and collective vision and strong teaching teams. Can you make that link for us?
Well, you know, it's a parallel to the whole program. If I'm working in this amazing toddler classroom with a team of 3 to 5 teachers, what is our vision for the year? What is our vision for our work as adults? What's our vision for our work with these children? And how are we getting unstuck? The sense that our field is stuck in the TTWWADI syndrome, that's the way we've always done it. So you get a new energized teacher coming into a group that's like, this is the way we've always done it. There's no spark, there's no change. So sitting down and having dialogues about who we are today, who this new team formation is, who this amazing group of children is, and creating a vision that's going to guide us forward. Putting it on the wall, putting it in our parent newsletter, checking in at our team meetings all the time. Are we living this? in an impactful way? Or have we slipped back into mediocre practices of this is the way we've always done it?
Mhm. So now I'm going to ask you about, dealing with hierarchical structures, because many organizations are actually set up that way, where the vision, for example, is top down. So you're told what the vision is, and because many organizations are set up that way, and what strategies do you have around still doing collective goals, even if you're not able to directly input into the vision?
Well, and it's what's our vision to live to this vision? We can have an interactive vision in the toddler classroom that relates to a program goal of creating a thriving organization where children, teachers, and parents are respected and valued and nurtured. Beautiful vision. What does that look like in our toddler room? What does that look like in our pre-K room? How are we aligning with that beautiful statement? But how are we creating the real fabric of what we're going to do every single day in that program?
Mhm.
So I think they can coexist. And I think, if you're working for a large organization that has, hundreds of programs, it's going to be a little bit different program to program. It's going to be a little bit different classroom to classroom. Your vision is not your mission. Your mission is why that organization exists. And your mission statement can be solid for 75 years. Your vision statement is how we're going to bring ourselves to the very best of that mission. And so really understanding that and delineating that and helping, whether we're working with individual teams, individual programs, multi-site organizations, how this all works and the importance of keeping it fresh to create what we need to create for children and families.
Mhm. And in your book, one of the things that I loved is you give lots of great strategies. And one of my favorite around collective visioning is the scavenger hunt. And it makes me think of what you were just saying in terms of using this as an exercise to send people out to see how is the vision showing up in our environment, to
Yeah.
literally go on that scavenger hunt to see, what's around us in our physical environment that shows us that we are living the vision. And so I wanted to, to point that out, because that's something that I never thought of. And I was thinking, wow, how powerful is that as an exercise? Because again, you're doing it as a group, but it makes it come alive for people in a way than just the theory, right? Of just posting the vision. It's like, how do we live this day to day?
And
And so,
how does everyone that walks in the building know what it is and
mm,
see it? So, I worked with a beautiful program, and it's a lot of work, big staff, but really needed a collaborative vision to steady the ship and kind of set sail. And they did it through a multi-step process. But then they took their vision and they blew it up like poster size on foam board. And it's in the center of the hallway when you come in the building. And every month, a different classroom is charged with putting photos around the vision statement that show that vision statement coming to life.
mm,
So we keep it fresh, we keep it interactive. Every month at the staff meeting, people are excited to see the pictures. Each team gets a chance to reflect on what does this look like in our program, and how are we showing up for this, and how can we relay this? We know we're a very visual society. So it could be something bold and right there as people are coming in the building. And then it's the everyday nuances of the classroom. When I was directing a Reggio inspired preschool, everyone had a budget item around this.
mm.
What do you need to buy? What do you see as pivotal to your classroom that really reflects who you are, that could draw people into the story of the work, into the story of the classroom? So one thing stands out, a team was really working on creating a kindness curriculum in a peaceful environment. Actually, it was a 4-year-old classroom with 14 children, 13 boys one year. So they
Oh,
were very intentional about what they wanted to create and how they wanted to live it. And they had these beautiful practices. But every day when they came in from lunch, from the playground, The teacher greeted them at the door with a really special whisper of sweet nothings about that child in a specific way. Then children transitioned to the table, set out their food, and there was a little bit of music playing, and children had to do a little yoga pose with their hands or in their ears, just like 2 minutes of breathing. And then everyone said namaste, bon appetit, and they would have their lunch. So this sense of crash, bang, boom into the room versus coming in. Well, we found a beautiful like mobile out of tin that said namaste, and it had little forks and knives in turquoise paint when we were visiting a school out in Colorado. And the teacher was like, can I get this? I'm like, this is the heart of your work. Of course, this is what we have to be investing in. So you walk into this room, and over the tables is this beautiful statement piece. Just reflects everything that they were trying to do. So moving away from, we have to buy, these materials to what's on the walls, what are we displaying, what are these pieces of our work, what are these pieces of ourselves that need to be evident in the classroom.
So now what you're talking about is, as we're layering the environment, and I love that you talked about right as you enter into the program, how do we want people to see, or what do we notice? But you're also talking about, in addition to setting the culture, but the energy within that program as well, which we don't often don't sit back and really think about it and be intentional about it. It kind of just tends to happen. Or like you're saying, there may be things up on the, the wall that may be, related to family communications, or there may be compliance. But really, what are we seeing that sets the tone, the energy of the vision? And then and layering it so that it's in everything, including our decisions around materials to buy, right? So yeah, because it's not just about children. I think we can get very narrowly focused and, just curricular materials go in there, and not so much that as adults, we need those reminders as well. So getting that mobile that you talked about is great, for the children, but as an adult walking in, it's like, wow.
Yeah, this is what we value. These are our big rocks. These are our core values. We're in another classroom where the teachers and children each had like a quart mason jar, and they had special collections. And everyone shared their collections. And children came into the school year after collecting for the summer. And so pieces of who we are and what we value and how we bring this to the work, and words and images and documentation pieces that really reflect these core values and the vision and intent of the program during this period are essential.
Mm-hmm. So I want to take us sideways for a minute and talk about, even the word energy, because it's not something that's used in our field very often. And I know that sometimes it kind of has this, woo-woo aspect around it. And wanted to ask you, how do you present the idea of, again, that shared energy, but we want it, positive as well, in such a way that it doesn't kind of scare people off, or helps them to understand that there's actually a science behind it?
Well, that's the key, this understanding that we have research now on the physiological aspects of positivity, on the aspects of children being in positive strength-based environments. So bringing the work to the field for me is about bringing that research and really staying current. So I'm looking at my bookshelf of all my favorite things in front of me, and Barbara Fredrickson's work on positivity. She's an internationally acclaimed researcher, and her work speaks so beautifully to the work we're doing in early childhood. So letting people know that this isn't like, oh, this is some like loosey-goosey feel good or woo-woo, as you say. This is what we know. Positive people are healthier. They're living longer. Children in positive environments, their brains are firing up. They feel supported and focused, and they're able to learn. So we really need to do that in a way that helps people see, oh yeah, there's so-and-so with their rose-colored glasses. No, this is the science of what we know now, understanding the neuroscience, understanding the physiological aspects of this, I find draws people in right away. And bringing in like powerful quotes. Barbara Fredrickson's, positive people are now living 20% longer. 20%, like for the average woman, that's up to 20 years longer because they're not filling their bodies with toxic energy. So, and then bringing in the research at the Center for the Developing Child at Harvard University on toxic stress in children's brains, and letting people know if children are in environments where there is toxic energy, which I see adult to adult all the time, and adult to a child in classrooms, children's brains are not able to function at their optimal level. So I think for all of us, staying current on the neuroscience, being present to the research, reading, and engaging with this work every chance we get is vital.
Yeah, and so easier said than done. And the reason I'm saying that is because often, and to a certain extent, people are still having this experience. I know for me growing up and going through education, it was always around I think of the red pen, right? So something is wrong, it gets crossed out, or you get a mark with a red pen. And it's this idea about, you don't want to fail, or we instantly start thinking about all the things that we want to improve. And this idea of being positive in such a way as being strength-based. And for example, using things like appreciative inquiry, because I don't know that people, again, are making those links between the science, like what does it mean to really be strength-based? And we're not just talking about being nice, right? Strength-based is not about being nice. And how does that relate to appreciative inquiry in such a way that, it strengthens everybody, and especially that teaching team? Well, I said a mouthful there.
Yeah, so the heart of this is we can be strength-based and help people grow. So we need to understand, I love DeWitt Jones, he's a National Geographic photographer that's turned sort of amazing public speaker, but he says, by celebrating what's right, we find the energy to fix what's wrong. And when we think about this with children, when we can really highlight their strengths and then help them use those strengths to do a little bit better in something else. Your reading is coming so far, what are you thinking about? What changed? Why did that help you? And what could you do a little differently in this area? So, the old classic elementary school report card, the kid comes home with 3 A's and 3 B's and a C. Why'd you get a C? We go right to that to say, wow, you've never had this many A's. What's changed with your study habits? What's helped you be this successful? And that's the same approach. We want to model this with teachers. So people's example I get all the time. I go in and do observations and the teachers are putting on a show for me. They're showing you what they're capable of. And we need to highlight that and to say, I've never seen this classroom run so smoothly. I know there are days when things seem a little rougher, but the way you manage this and the way you did that, this is something special that you have going on here. What helped today be as successful as it could be? And what could you bring from today to some of those more challenging days? So practicing that flip, really highlighting that. We're not walking around. When people tell me that, they're putting on a show, I found this poem when I was researching my books called The Snoopervisor from 1929. From room to room the snoopervisor goes, noting each fault with lofty frown. We need to be in a whole different place. This is 2020. We are not snoopervisors. We're not going in to observe so we can catch them doing wrong. We're going in to observe to identify their strengths and support them in their areas of growth. And just changing our mindset around that, changing our language. If I know a teacher's struggling with parent-child communication, I need to watch for those moments that are going really well. Snap a picture on my phone, drop her note in her box. Wow, Johnny was having some frustrating moments on the playground today. And the way you spoke with him and made eye contact and got to his level, and I saw you put your hand on his shoulder, things are changing. Your relationship is strengthening. Your strategies are improving. Note the strengths and you're going to get more strengths. We need to do this colleague to colleague, supervisor to teacher, teacher to child, teacher to parent. And to me, if I could just infiltrate that message to the world, I think we would be creating really positive changes. And when people come into the director's office and say, oh, this teacher's at it again, or this child's at it again, we need to stop that conversation right there and go to a more strength-based approach and find ways that we're changing our questions, changing our dialogues, so that we are not taking that deep negativity dive with them.
Yeah, okay. You said so many things. I'm trying to think about how do I unpack it all in a short amount of time. So I think one of the things that stood out for me was, again, when you kind of left it with even colleague to colleague or supervisor to colleague when staff are coming in and they're having a hard time with each other. Because I think as teachers, we naturally look for the good in our children. And granted, there'll be some children who, drive us nuts or challenging behaviors. But for the most part, as early educators and most teachers, we go in and we're very good at finding the strength in children. I don't know that we're as good or as accepting of adults. So using this strategy of being strength-based with each other. So that idea of, okay, so there's something that your colleague or your coworker is doing. What are all the great things that they're doing as well? Are we recognizing that in each other so that when we go to have these conversations, we're not starting from this place of deficit or negativity, but really it's this shift of, I know you are here doing the best you can with what you have, which is a very different mindset to enter into a conversation in such a way as to help move people through those, that anger and resentment that tends to come up and stay between teaching teams. And wanted to ask you about your work. Are you seeing the same thing when you start really talking to a program and helping them to really shift and embrace, appreciative inquiry or moments of effectiveness or bright spots? I mean, there's a lot of different terminology for that. And the strategies that you've used to kind of help them shift into that mindset.
I really encourage people to practice, and model. So for me, the sense of creating a flip, if somebody comes and says, oh, I'm so frustrated with Jane and, this is making me crazy, say, what's the key issue? What's the real challenge? I know you're upset about this, but in, 1 or 2 words, what is the key issue? And what do you want instead? And that's an appreciative inquiry technique called the flip. And that changes the dialogue, because we say, yeah, she did that to me and she was in this other classroom and that happened last year and then this happened. What do you want instead? I want our team to function in a way that's this. What would be a first step? What could we try? What do we need to move away from? Because that also falls into that's the way we've always done it. If everyone's like dumping the team problems on Jane, we can't really function well because we have Jane. That doesn't hold water. Like, what is the key issue? We're having communication issues because one of our team members isn't as verbal as others or isn't comfortable talking about that. What we would like is more open communication. And then as a leadership support, you can start moving there. But you stop that whack-a-mole game of what's wrong, why it's wrong, how come it's wrong, and you go to what we want instead. And I have to say, I do feel like this is still a huge area of growth. Although we have good skills with children, I find I go into programs, I work with groups, and people are saying, oh, Johnny, he's ruining my classroom. I can't, that people are still taking some deficit-based approaches
Mhm.
to describing children, to talking about their classroom children, that we really need to think about that. I'm just preparing a workshop on this for a group next week, that what are the life skills every child needs? If Johnny isn't getting along with his friends, he's not wreaking havoc on the classroom, he's struggling with the life skill of affiliation. How do I fit in and how do I belong? Which is also the similar issue to Jane on the team. Like, she's struggling with affiliation. So
Mhm.
really getting them to start naming it, to think about, when is this child at its best? What life skill do we need to work on? What are we going to do to prevent sort of these meltdown and hard moments? What can I do to build my relationship with that child to strengthen the bond?
Mhm.
And, these really important questions to move us in the right direction, whether it's teacher, child, teacher, teacher, leader, teacher, paradigms.
So, Susan, you're talking about some really difficult conversations. And the reason I say that is because when you do the flip as a strategy, with staff, really what you're asking them to do is to shift out of being a victim and to shift into taking ownership in terms of their power. And everybody has power in a situation, not over others, but certainly their own reactions, and their strategies and their methods. So how do you help people navigate the emotions around that? Because for some of us, and I'll raise my hand, sometimes we get really entrenched in being that victim. She did me wrong.
Right. And it's also a method of hiding our own weaknesses. So we have this victim mentality, and then we think, oh, our team's not going well, let's put it over here on this other person, instead of saying, geez, I'm struggling with this. So the more we start working on these key issues of respect and trust, that we're all here to work towards the same vision, that we have the same goals of supporting children, know your why. Why are you in this field? And then how is our behavior reflecting that? So really getting to the core of some of this, and this is an ongoing process,
Mhm.
for leaders and for teams to really start thinking about this. What does this behavior represent? I always, I taught the children with challenging behavior course many times. My key
Mhm.
phrase was behavior is language.
That's right.
Well, this is the same with adults. If we're seeing this type of behavior, what's it telling us? And
Mhm.
what do we need to learn? So I have some tools around, like a 10-question assessment on how our team is doing in terms of respect and trust and communication. So to give people a gauge of where they're at, where their strengths are, and where they need to grow. So building these dialogues in a way that aren't against me versus you, but wow, here's some benchmarks for strong teams.
Mhm.
And what do we want to do to get stronger? And what did we learn from this? And what are our goals? So we're creating a space for this to be the work, the real work that needs to start happening with our teams
Mhm.
in our programs, big or small.
So when I hear you talk about that, I instantly moved into parallel processing, right? So we know we want staff to do well and really work with our children and families. And when I think about the parallel process as a leader, right? It's also a parallel process for me in terms of even using things like data. So like some of the tools that you're talking about in your book in terms of let's find out really where our staff are and their perceptions of where they are. And so as a leader, I need to really look at myself and ask myself those same reflective questions that I'm asking my staff to ask of themselves and their teaming. How am I supporting, this culture of positivity, and really looking at the data and using data to inform those decisions, because sometimes data can be scary. Do I really want to know what my staff think? about, you know, right? So,
Yeah, but if we don't get there, and if we don't use the tools and the resources we have around leadership assessment, around team assessments, around classroom assessments, I'm a big proponent of the class tool, which gives us the insight into the positivity and negativity that exists in the classroom, because they help us establish where we are so we can develop that roadmap to where we want to go. People are saying, I wish my teams were better. What does that mean? Wish my teams were stronger. You know, we need to have clarity and then build action plans and resources and supports.
mm-hmm. So that takes us full circle back to the map, and you talking about your experience as a child and going on the road trip, because we talk about, you know, the vision or and the goal. Where do we want to go? But we also need to know where we're starting from. And that's what
Absolutely.
those, right? That's what those data tools do for us. Like, because how do you know how to get somewhere if you don't even know where you're starting?
Well, and I think a lot of teams will say, you know, how is it? Oh, we're good. We're good. You know, we're good. You know, things are okay. You know, we're working it out. But, you know, what does that actually mean? Where is that benchmark
Mm-hmm.
in terms of really having concrete information?
Mm-hmm.
So we need to move past that to full clarity and real focused, intentional actions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know, Susan, I have to say, I can keep talking to you forever because you're just a wealth of knowledge. But I also know that we've come to the end of our time together. And just wanted to ask you really quick, in terms of your work in the field and really getting out there and helping us as leaders develop these really inspiring environments for our staff and our children and families, is there a one takeaway that you can give us, or a thought or strategy that we can step into if we want to say, I really want to start this tomorrow?
Well, I think, you know, one statement that stands out for me with this new book is professional accountability as a fundamental value. How are you as a leader building professional accountability for yourself related to all these issues, and then creating the dynamics with vision and goals and really meaningful, intentional work at your staff meetings, team meetings, professional days to move this forward? So this sense of being intentional, of owning this work, and just getting on that trip, getting everybody on that bus and knowing where you're going, and not saying, oh yeah, that was interesting, and then dropping the ball. We
Mm-hmm.
need to live it and we need to create it. And when we see this happening and we walk into places where this is happening, it's just amazing, you
Mm-hmm.
know, to see and feel and live it.
Absolutely. So thank you. I again appreciate your time for joining us today. And again, we'll be giving away one copy of Susan's book, Inspiring Early Childhood Leadership. So stay tuned for that. And Susan, have a fantastic day. And I hope to talk to you again soon.
All right, great to talk with you. Thanks for having me.
You as well.